So, on this episode of the podcast, we are going to be interviewing Sami Hero, who is a European CEO of an AI company called LEAI. Probably wondering, what does a European CEO know about American healthcare? Well, turns out Sami used to work in the industry in New York City / New Jersey, so probably actually knows more about the US healthcare system than most. So, enjoy the podcast, check it out. Great conversation with Sami Hero.
So I was born in Finland, went to school here, and then I did a 23-year detour around the world. And I was in New Jersey for 16 years prior to moving back to Finland to run a scale up. And then last year, I joined Ellie as a CEO. And this is kind of going back to the future, so to speak, because I've been working with the data modeling, databases, data warehousing, and analytics since late 80s, early 90s. So it's a very familiar topic to me, and what we're doing is it's kind of interesting because it essentially answers a question to why so many data projects tend to fail to meet expectations.
So then what makes LEAI different from other AI companies?
And we're kind of like what you would call a vertical AI company. So we use AI to help people achieve their tasks more effectively. And what I mean with that is that when we work with data, we usually have some sort of legacy systems that we need to reverse engineer. And the documentation is usually crap, if you allow the technical term. So what we do, for instance, is that we reverse engineer databases or operational systems like SAP, Microsoft Dynamics, and others, and we create synthetic metadata using AI from it. So if you are dealing with it like SAP, God forbid you have to do that, but if you have to,
My father actually used to work for SAP.
yeah, I used to work there too.
I'm
So
well
it's
aware.
I have a little bit
Oh,
of
really?
crazy memories from that. But it's like you realize that the database tables are called like DD02 or KPN68 and stuff like that. So AI helps you make sense of the systems. And then we also use AI to help you make sense of the models, improve the data models that you work with. And you can ask questions. It's like, help me make this better, essentially. And AI works with you in the context that you have and makes you more effective, essentially.
And I was looking at the website before, like it seems like it's a decent operation. Like how many employees are at the company?
And we're actually pretty small. We're 18 employees based in Helsinki. But then we have huge corporations are using Ellie to do enterprise data modeling. Essentially, they use it for semantic modeling, and then they refine their semantic models into logical and physical models that they can deploy into their cloud services usually.
And why Helsinki? Like why is this your base of operations, would you say?
Yeah, so there's a little bit of history. So the company started as a spin-off from a training and consulting business called Hovi Competency Development. So they were essentially training people on how to do conceptual modeling, particularly, and how to build data vaults and data warehouses and so forth. And they realized that there wasn't a really good tool to do that. So a lot of people have been doing this with Microsoft Visio or Lucid Charts, or Miro is a very popular technology. Also with whiteboards and flip charts. The problem with using those types of drawing tools, particularly, is that you can collaborate pretty well, but you don't actually generate any sort of metadata or business rules or glossaries or anything. It's like once you're done with a pretty picture, somebody needs to go and start typing.
And then how did this end up becoming LEAI?
Yeah, so in our case, it's so we essentially turned it into a product. So we turned the practice of modeling from like a virtual whiteboard. We brought it into cloud, and you have this canvas where business people and IT can in real time they can collaborate together. So say they'll start talking about like let's say sales and marketing example. You start talking about it's like who is a customer? How do we define a customer? And what does the customer buy? Well, the customer buys a product. And how do we define the product? Where it's made? Does it have if it's let's say an e-commerce scenario, you buy the product from a website. So website becomes an entity. The customer is an entity. The product is an entity. Then the product is there's a transaction essentially is that it gets delivered from somewhere. So it gets delivered from a warehouse and so forth. So you essentially model the business reality with the relationships between, and you define the relationships is like one customer can buy multiple products and so forth. And that then the goal is that that picture, that model reflects reality, and ideally it's very easy to understand. You look at it, the business person is like, yep, that's exactly what we do.
Got it. And how does AI then fit into all of this? So you take the data, and then what does the AI do with that data?
Yeah, so the AI usually helps in a lot of time. What ends up happening is that you look at the model, and you essentially you can ask the AI, is like, help me make this better. Like my context is I'm an e-commerce company that has multiple warehouses and has multiple websites and a bunch of products and things like that. You can ask the AI, is like, given all of this context, what is my model missing? And then the AI looks at it and says, "Hey, have you considered that you should add a distribution route or delivery times or delivery means or something like that into the model with the relationships?" Or sometimes you just ask about it. Is that sometimes you're working with a complete mess from an existing system, and you just essentially ask, is like, "Hey, I need to figure out the profitability of my customer segments. Like help me with some data assets that could start solving it." And then AI will start essentially parsing is like, "Hey, you should look at these particular areas."
I don't want you to give up like your secret sauce too much, but like what typically does the AI say about operations?
It's well, I'll give you an example because real life is usually pretty messy, and we work with large health systems as well as large banks and things like that. So it's quite common that you have something like 1,000 tables in the data warehouse or data lake house. We've seen situations where the companies we recently spoke to one company in the U.S. They had 15,000 tables in their Snowflake environment, and at that point you start to be out of control. And now what we can do is that we can create some sense out of that in a way is that we can pull all of that in, and we can figure out is like, hey, out of that 15,000 you could probably cut 80 or 90% if you model it a little bit in a smarter way, and you solve your analytics. Usually it's meant for analytics or AI data preparation for some other purposes.
We're almost doing something. It's not entirely similar, but our startup Caesar Health,
Yep.
it's a we know already what the operational bottlenecks are in medical clinics, right? And we've built a suite of AI agents to tackle that. But it's not so much about looking for where the bottleneck is. It's like we already kind of know the bottleneck is, and we're using AI to solve that. So, for example, faxes, getting turned into structured data, or phones, instead of going to voicemail, it goes to an AI agent that can schedule the patient in, or AI note taking. So instead of doing manual notes, AI takes the notes, puts it into the EMR. This is the kind of stuff that we're working on for our Caesar Health project that we're currently developing. So it sounds like then your main thing at LEAI is using data plus an AI to solve operational bottlenecks effectively.
Yeah, it's you could say that, and also it's kind of like very upstream. Is that when you're trying to organize your data, so you need to figure out is that what are the entity types in a way. It's a little bit like glossary building in also in a graphical way with the help of AI. Is understanding is like, here's my patient, and then related to the patient there are like diagnosis, and then there's a doctor, and then there's probably some sort of a location, and then for a location the attribute, whether it's a clinic or a hospital, it's just an attribute, but usually the patients go someplace, right? Or sometimes there is a treatment channel. It could be a physical, or it could be virtual if you do it with like telehealth type of scenario.
Yeah.
So we kind of like map all of those things so that then, in a way, your AI could also leverage that as context when you're figuring out is that, okay, here's a blob of text. So how do I create sense out of that? And you can start, the AI will essentially, with the help of context, pull out the things. It's like, oh, that was the patient, that was the location, that was the transaction when the patient, and in some countries they call patients customers, which I'm still struggling with, or clients.
Yeah, yeah.
But and it's and then you get to kind of like in some countries, like in Finland, we use this. In some areas, we use this ridiculous American software. So you have to do the ICD-10 or whatever the coding system is. So the poor
Mm.
doctors nowadays are trying to figure out the diagnosis and all the coding. So in your case, you could use AI, right, to say, okay, this patient came in with a cough, like I've had a cough now for 6 weeks. So what do we do about it, and how do we break it into the diagnostic codes? But in our end, we just say that there's a patient, location, doctor, and a code. Like we don't really care from an architecture perspective. We don't
Mm-hmm.
care that there are thousands of codes. We just define the code and what goes into it.
Mm. Interesting. And so then could you dive then more into your healthcare experience? It's
Yeah, me personally, I worked. My last job in the U.S. was essentially with Walter Schiller Health.
mm-hmm.
So we were a division of about $1 billion in revenue, and my division predominantly we sold scientific publishing services and databases and research tools. We did a lot of educational materials for med schools and nursing schools, and then we had this fantastic product called Up-to-Date, which almost every hospital in the world uses. Essentially, it's essentially a diagnostic tool for physicians. That also uses
Mm.
nowadays AI, but in a kind of in a controlled sense, because we all know that AI still hallucinates a fair amount. So you need to be careful with it.
Yes, of course. And there's been a lot of stories of now that people sort of maybe not using AI, a little bit too much trust in AI in certain industries. Not name any names, and maybe someone looking at a report and being like, "What's this?" So it's interesting that you're a Finnish guy. I'm an American living in Europe, and you're a European living in Europe who used to live in America. What's your thoughts on the U.S. sort of healthcare industry versus your Finnish European healthcare industry?
Yeah, um, I became also American while I was living there, so I'm dual citizen nowadays,
Oh,
uh,
really?
which
Oh,
is
wow.
which is fantastic because I get to do my tax filings every year. Well, luckily,
Oh,
I don't have to pay taxes in the U.S. because the Finnish taxes are so ridiculously high, so that helps. Um, no, I think healthcare. It's like the uh, healthcare should not be for profit, generally speaking. Like I don't think the U.S. System being predominantly private is not a bad system at all. Um, but I think it's crazy that the doctors in cases are struggling, and the hospitals are not getting reimbursed correctly because the insurance companies are making billions in profit. It's
hmm.
so I have a good example. A friend of mine, um, he was getting a heart attack, and he essentially ended up getting a couple of stents in his arteries. And he had a fantastic insurance, like really the best of the best. And the hospital only kept him like 36 hours in the ICU and in the hospital because they weren't making enough revenue, because his insurance company wasn't reimbursing enough. So they were kind of like, here, take some morphine, go home and rest, but get the hell out of
Yeah.
here because we could use your bed for somebody else. So that kind of attitude is a little bit, over the top. Um, and but in Finland we have public healthcare, but most people actually have an insurance from the company, like we do.
Mm.
And whenever one of our employees is feeling sick or needs something to be checked, they go to a private doctor or private hospital. They get everything checked real quick. um,
It's similar here, actually.
yeah,
But
yeah. And it's I think this kind of public private partnership works super well.
mm, yeah. So I'm glad that you mentioned insurance, because this is one of the big things at Caesar Health that we want to tackle. Is we want to build a system that uses AI agents to make sure that claims actually don't get denied.
Hmm.
Have you ever heard about this kind of concept of
Yeah,
AI
actually, in
insurance
the U.S.,
verification?
yes, and I don't think there was one other startup a while back. I spoke to them. I think they were using more machine learning algorithms than anything else. But
Mm,
the whole thing with U.S. reimbursement is that you need to figure out which insurance the patient has, and then how do you code it in a way that it gets reimbursed in the most likely way. Because a patient from United Healthcare comes with a cough. If gets coded in a certain way, it gets covered. But if you code the patient from Blue Cross Blue Shield with the same codes, it won't get reimbursed, right? So,
yeah.
so you need to be super careful with that. And yeah, that would be. I think that is a killer solution if you can crack that somehow.
Well, imagine this, right? Imagine patient comes in, AI note taker takes the notes. The AI note taker is intelligent enough to understand how to code everything. It sets everything up. Then another AI agent goes, it sends the AI, sends the data to whatever, Blue Cross, to United Healthcare, and then files the claim, right? Not a single person even, I mean, obviously someone's going to probably check it,
Yeah,
verify everything, no hallucinations, but everything's automated. But then the future, the far future is now United Healthcare has its AI agent that's job is to make sure that the claim doesn't go through.
exactly. Yep.
AI agents fighting. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, no, it is, and I think they're probably already using a bunch of AI agents or at least some sort of machine learning algorithms for denying claims and things like that based on their profitability targets for certain segments and things like that.
Yeah, I've never thought about that, but you're probably right. Like, there's so much money in U.S. healthcare that they have to have some. They're probably developing some pretty crazy stuff.
Yeah, and the data is there, right? So people have had those EOB letters, the explanation of benefits and things like that, and there's also CMS is full of data. So if you can leverage, the more you can leverage that, right? So you can train your model better as well. So if you're using, one of the foundation models, if you can get your access to the data, you could create really cool context out of that.
Do you think though that, especially with clinics and not hospitals, it's almost like it's an uphill battle because how do you fight someone that has so much data, like an insurance company?
Yeah, I think the that's where eventually, well, that's partly probably why some of the hospital systems are being acquired by private equity in the US as well, so that you have to become big enough that you can have a negotiation power with insurance companies. And then you can
Mm,
start having enough of a data set. And obviously, US is good in a way that with the coding standards. A lot of the diagnoses have been coded in the past already with the different ICD coding systems. So it's easier to data mine that, right? And then you
mm.
could start building our models. But I think it will be an arms race. You're absolutely right. Is that how do we push the coding in that most likely gets reimbursed, and then they will kick it back, and then you do some tweaks and you kick it back in and try to do it a couple of times, and then at some point some doctor needs to call and yell at somebody, another human in the other end, right?
Ultimately, I think from the clinic side, it will be private equity owned clinics that will end up being the first to really develop AI tools because of, like you said, the data, but also just they're looking for the return on investment. And
Yeah, it's
AI is
already
that return on
happening
investment.
in it's already happening in other insurance areas, like just not health insurance, but like property and auto insurance. A lot of those agencies are like smaller agencies are now getting sold into these clusters who then use AI for customer service and renewal selling and claims processing and all of that sort of things. So it's definitely, I think it's just a matter of time. It's going to come into the smaller clinics and groups of clinics, right?
Healthcare always lags a little bit. Uh, in the US, as we know, it'll probably be the first just because of its private nature, but and then in
And then
100
you have all the
years,
HIPAA rules, right? So that's just
yeah.
yet another set of regulations and controls that needs to go on top of it.
I do think the US will be first, and then I think Europe will be in 100 years. We'll have AI in our healthcare as well.
Yeah,
At least in the
unfortunately,
European
you're
Union.
probably kind of right. It's like, yeah, the Europeans love their regulation,
Yes, yes.
but I think there's like small scale AI that happens in Europe as well. Like there's a startup from Finland actually called MedicubeX, uh, and they have this kind of pre-visit health check. So you go into this like a framery box, essentially, like a phone booth, right? And then it takes your it doesn't take any samples or anything, but it takes your blood pressure and your temperature and a bunch of other metrics, and then it essentially can communicate that with the physician who's about to take you. And I think
Mm,
that has some smarts built into it. So there are some smaller ways of doing things already. Um, and then of course you have like this, like Finland has a couple of these private hospital networks and clinics, like they own a lot of the local clinics. They're investing a lot in telehealth, and I would be surprised if they didn't invest a ton already in AI as well.
mm. So then, what is your vision of the AI future? It's a very broad question.
Yep.
Um,
Yeah, no, I think my hope is that AI will become more and more useful tool for humans. And I would very much, I'm a little bit nervous about the agentic, the kind of the wildest dreams of the agentic AI, where just a bunch of agents talk to MCP servers and potentially do business with cryptocurrencies completely autonomously.
mm,
So I like the idea where I can engage with the AI tools, and they propose to me certain ways of, or certain actions or certain information which is already like kind of prepared in a good way, that if I know what I'm doing, I can quickly accept it and move on. It's like my developers are using AI a lot. They use Cursor.ai and other tools, but they are very senior developers. So when AI spits some code, they can immediately review it and decide if it's any good, or if they need to keep on kind of having that chat going. So similarly with healthcare, I would love the physician to avoid doing boring stuff, the crazy coding, and I could just dictate real quick what's going on. It could transcribe everything, could pull out all of those codes, maybe even create prescriptions on the fly for me, and then I eyeball it and I'm like, yep, looks right, go. um,
yeah. It's so interesting. Just hearing you chat, it reminded me. Someone shared with me an old, I don't know what I'd refer to it as, case study, news piece, opinion piece. When the internet, the peak of the dot-com bubble, saying the internet's going to make us all smarter. And of course, that didn't happen. The internet did not make us all smarter.
yep.
It was most people use the internet to do nothing. But it reminds me of the same with AI. Whereas it's like, I think there's going to be an entire generation, it's going to make people stupider and more dependent on it. What's your thoughts on that, would you say?
No, you're 100% right, because part of the challenge we have is like with the, like, let's say coding. It's so easy to do stuff now with AI, whether you use Lovable or Base 44 or any of the thousand tools out there that are helping people build stuff with AI. You can also build things which are absolutely horrible, and there are a whole bunch of like TikTok videos already. Is that companies hire first the vibe coder, and then they hire somebody to watch over the vibe coder, and then the senior guys are like, seriously, you want me to look at the 12 million row pull request? And yeah, so it is. Um, yeah, I think you're right. Is that it doesn't necessarily make us stupider, but more stupid, I guess, would be the grammatically correct way of saying that. But actually, I think like the doom scrolling on TikTok and stuff like that. Yes, it's definitely, the net has made us a stupider. Um, but yeah, what it does is that it makes us think a little bit less. It's a similar thing. It's a silly thing, but I use this analogy a little bit. Is that I love to play golf, and since I got this laser based distance tool to measure distances, essentially, like it's a
Oh
little
yeah, yeah,
binocular,
I know
right?
Trevor.
And rangefinder, and as I started using it, my ability to just estimate distances got worse. It's
Yeah.
to the point where now I'm starting to like guess in my mind is like, I think that's 55 yards, that's 60 yards, and then I laser it after, and I'm like, okay, I was kind of within range type of thing. So similarly, ChatGPT, when people, before we asked Google everything, now we're asking Gemini or ChatGPT or Claude or whatever. um, the challenge I think we have is, and this is kind of the hallucination risk, is that all of these LLMs are geared to give super encouraging, logical sounding, confident answers, even if they're completely wrong. You know,
Yes.
and if you're not, if you're too lazy, you just grab it. You're like, okay, that's the truth, right? And you don't think critically at all. It's like, maybe this is too good to be true.
Do you think that's a flaw?
I think it's a design criteria where, and you can work around it. You can actually prompt the LLM is like, be super critical. Don't try to cheer me up. And you put a bunch of things, be super factual, verify everything from multiple sources, and yes, and then it will give you a better answer. But the thing is, again, is like, does anybody really bother doing that? It's like, we're
Probably
just
not.
gonna put a quickly simple prompt, and it gives us like, what should my marketing strategy be for a SaaS company next year, and boom, it builds a like super cool PowerPoint that I can then take to my board with budgets and everything, which could be good, could be complete crap, but if I don't look at it, it's there is a risk to go present that to somebody else. I think McKinsey or
So th-
somebody, one of the big consulting firms, just got caught on having like AI created slop in their
it
$500,000
was
research project.
Deloitte. I think it was
Deloitte,
Deloitte.
yeah, that's wild.
Yeah. Who my father also worked for. My dad's worked for everyone. Now that I think about it. Uh, but so then, how do you personally at LEAI do hiring in the AI era? Um,
Yeah, that's really, actually, that is really tricky. I'm contemplating on asking people to just send like a quick video or some sort of a text, like, because you can't trust any more applications and cover letters, because AI does such a wonderful thing fixing your essentially your CV and cover letter, perfectly matching the job description you put out there. And so
yeah.
for me, the risk is that I'll get a couple of hundred perfectly good looking applications, even though they're not. Um, so one way, actually, we did. I hired my marketing manager actually this year, this year, through a Facebook group, which is essentially Americans in Finland, because I decided I wanted an American, right? Because my sales guy is an
Of course,
American as well.
I totally understand. I
Yeah,
totally
it's
get
like
it.
network. Everything is. I think things are going to become more and more network based. It's who do you know, who can you connect with, and and it's try to find people out of the network rather than put a job description out there and then get thousands of applications.
Yeah, that's the same that goes with me. I actually, the CMO of the company, I went to high school with him, and that's how I ended up here. So
Yeah,
he vouched for me, and then yeah, that's where I am now.
yeah, it's fantastic.
Oh, awesome. Do you have any other last points you'd like to make before we wrap this up?
No, I think we covered it really well. It's kind of trust but verify. The old saying works with AI really well as well. And at the end of the day, we all need to create shareholder values in some shape or form. So AI can definitely help us there.
Thank you so much, Sami.